Welcome afternoon, everyone. My name is Kyle Mox. I am Associate Dean for National Scholarships at Arizona State University, and I am the primary Fulbright Program Advisor at Arizona State. And joining me here today is the ONSA Assistant Director, Lori Stoff, who also does a lot of advising on Fulbright, and our Administrative Associate, Kai Johnson, who handles a lot of the logistics. And so if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat as we're moving through. And one of us will be able to answer that. But today, if you attended one of our earlier presentations, we're getting in a little more focused, talking about Fulbright. We've covered the basics, and at this point, we're going to drill a little deeper into what's involved in the graduate degree awards, which are a specialized type Fulbright award. If you haven't been to one of the general presentations, just know that this was it is one of the oldest and largest international exchange programs in existence. It's a Department of State program, so this is a federally funded program, and its primary mission is to promote the sharing of knowledge across cultural boundaries. And so the Fulbright Commission, as part of the program of the Bureau of Cultural and Educational Affairs, works with partnership commissions around the world to promote this mission. So most Fulbright awards are for about an academic year. Most are in the 9 to 10 month range, and they give out about 2,000 awards per year. So it's a very large program, substantial, and there's 4 main types of awards available, and we'll be covering one type of that today. In terms of timeline, we are at the left end of this arrow, and the application actually just opened earlier this week, April 2, and right before this, I was in an information session for advisors about what's new this year, and there's a lot of new and exciting changes for Fulbright this year. So basically, between now and our campus deadline of September 10th, you all will be coming up with ideas, writing rough drafts of your materials, getting everything in order, getting your letters of recommendation, and drafting multiple drafts of all your proposals all the way through the summer. And so that's the most common question that we get is, do you work in the summer? Absolutely. ONSA is open in the summer. We're here to provide advising because most of your work is going to be coming in the next few weeks and months as we get up to the September 10 deadline. So as we mentioned, there's 4 main types of awards, and there's a lot of small individual awards that you'll see in individual countries, but these are the biggest categories. The English Teaching Assistant Award, which is fairly self-explanatory, and then the Open Study Research. And Open Study Research comes in a couple of different flavors. There's Creative Performing Arts, which is fairly self-explanatory. There, as I mentioned, there's some unique awards in each of the countries. I just learned today that they're reopening an award specifically in Italy that's part of the World Slow Foods Movement. It's for study of food studies, right, which is very exciting in Italy, nonetheless. But the Graduate Degree Awards, right? And so that's what we're going to be focused on today, are Fulbright Awards that are specifically for graduate study. Each of the Open Study Research Awards are going to require a 2-page proposal because you have to make the case for this award, lay out what you're going to be doing with the year, so pretty substantial. You'll get your standard Fulbright benefits, which of course is travel, a living stipend. Most of the graduate degree awards are going to include tuition support. There are a few that do not, but in the instances where they don't pay for your tuition, the tuition is comically low by American standards. I was just working with a candidate this week, and I forget what country it was, and they did not provide tuition assistance, but the total cost for an entire master's program was about 3,400 euros. And they're like, oh, yeah, I can cover that. So not prohibitive, but it's usually covered. Tuition and fees are usually covered. Generally for 1 year, there are a couple that support doctoral degrees or a couple that provide more than 1 year of support. So if you do find a graduate degree that's longer than 1 year, you may have to think about how to fund the second or third years of that program. Does not happen very often. Most master's degrees outside the US can be completed in 1 year. And they are going to vary widely by country. And so many countries have open awards that you can use for graduate study, but then also have awards for specific universities. And so if you identify one of these universities and it seems like a good fit, you'll want to apply for that specific award that's unique to that country. You're going to see a lot of talk about affiliation. For any Open Study Research Award, affiliation is a big part of it. For graduate degree awards, in most cases, what that means is that you'll simply apply for admission to that graduate program. And so you will submit your Fulbright application, and then after you've done that, because that part of the process will be concluded in October, then you will later apply for admission to the graduate program. it has happened a couple of times in the 18 years I've been doing Fulbright advising that applicants neglect to apply for admission. I'm still a little flummoxed by that, but it does happen. So I'm reiterating that you must apply for admission to the graduate program. There's nothing that can be done after that point. They aren't going to reopen the admissions portal for you just because you're a finalist for Fulbright. The most common question I get is what happens if I get a Fulbright, but I don't get admitted to the graduate program? And the simple answer is that never happens, right? They are not going to offer you a Fulbright unless they are sure that you're going to be admitted, and they will find out before they do. But the reverse can be true. You can be admitted to the graduate program and not awarded a Fulbright, which is not a bad problem to have. There's ways to fix that. So in terms of thinking about what graduate program should you select, in general, you should be identifying ones that are a compelling next step for you, meaning that there is a logical connection between what you've previously studied and what you plan to do in the future, right? This is the middle part of the story. Like sometimes candidates will try to use this as an amuse-bouche, right? We're going to try something new and different here. I'm going to take a step aside and have a gap year before I go on to medical school. That's not exactly how this works, right? You need to be a strong competitive applicant for the graduate program that you're proposing, right? I have had candidates in varying fields. For instance, I had a supply chain management major apply for a literature program. And like, that's tough, right? Because you're going up against people who have strong backgrounds in that field already, and you don't have as much coursework or credence in that area. So again, just because this is a foreign university doesn't mean it suspends the normal logic of what is a good graduate program for you to choose. And as I said, you should have the right preparation for it. You should be paying attention to what their expectations for training are, what skill set you need to have, grades, all that sort of thing. But also it should make a clear pathway to what it is you're trying to do next. And so if you can't make that case, then this becomes far more difficult. The other thing to think about is it can't just be a good choice or an adequate choice, right? The program that you propose needs to be superior to most other options, because the question you'll get is, this is great, but why not just go do a psychology program at ASU or Stanford or Middlebury State or whatever? If there are obviously better choices out there, then you've got a difficult argument. On the other hand, if you can say, no, Maastricht University does this one program in a way that nobody else does it, or the faculty at this university research this one thing that I specialize in, or they're doing this, whatever it is, right? There's got to be a hook there as to why this is a good choice for you, not just a fine choice, right? So the other thing to be thinking about is that the overall alignment, all other considerations, all other factors are subordinate to the Fulbright mission, meaning that your presence there for that year should promote cultural exchange, mutual understanding, right? And so largely the readers are actually kind of apathetic towards whatever it is that you want to do. Your reasons for doing this don't matter them too much as to what promise you hold for upholding the Fulbright mission. And so programs that would put you in a place where maybe not a lot of people have met Americans, or that would put you in a place where there would be continued collaboration in the long run because you maintain a good relationship with them. So again, everything you think about, everything you talk about in the application should come back to that mutual exchange. So how do they select people for this award? What are they looking for exactly? It's a very common question. First off, feasibility. Always feasibility. Everything in open study research, it comes down to feasibility, and that is determined on a wide range of things. The work that you're proposing is valid. You're able to do it. You have the preparation to do it. The pathway is clear. You have the linguistic capabilities to do this. You have professional experience in this area. Maybe you've worked. Maybe you've done research. If it's in a non-English speaking country, that you have sufficient language proficiency to take graduate level coursework in Spanish or Hungarian or what have you. Before you panic, a large number of graduate programs throughout the world are delivered in English. That has become sort of the de facto language of education in the world. But there also needs to be some aspect of community engagement here, whether that's intrinsic to the project itself, the program that you've selected, what you're doing, or if let's say you're doing, polymer research in a lab for 40 hours a week. Well, there has to be some element in the application where you explain how you are engaging with the host country. And previous, experience in the country is a double-edged sword, and we'll talk about that a little bit. too much can be a problem, not enough can be a problem, but we'll unpack that in a minute. And then diversity, meaning that the Fulbright program as a federal program wants to send abroad a representative cohort. They would like to send abroad as many different types of Americans as they can so the world understands what a diverse and beautifully complex place we are. So anything that you bring to the table, whether it's institutional diversity, geographic diversity, socioeconomic diversity, race and ethnicity, ability level, anything that would mark you as somebody that, this person represents some certain segment of American culture. So when we talk about validity, first, how does this relate to the Fulbright mission? Does your work relate to that? How does it relate to your personal and professional goals? Is there a clear connection there? Is this a good place to do it? Is this best accomplished here, or are there obviously superior choices? Have you chosen a program that's really not well known for this particular field of study? And what is timely or compelling about this, right? If you think about the great challenges the world is facing right now, somebody proposing work related to climate change or refugee studies or peace and conflict resolution studies, right? These things are important and urgent. Not to say that other fields of study or wanting to study medieval literature isn't important, but you've got to figure out a way to make it relevant because they would like to see you improve the world. Are you well prepared? Does your undergraduate curriculum match what you're proposing to do? Do your letters of recommendation indicate that you're well prepared for this graduate study? Do you have a good record of research and academic achievement? What you're proposing to do in this timeline, is that reasonable? Can you accomplish all of this in this time frame? And again, do you have adequate cultural awareness, language training, what have you? Don't think about Fulbright as a side door into a competitive graduate program. So I think sometimes applicants think that Fulbright will provide easier access, and it does not make it any easier. You are applying for admission separately, right? So you still need to be a very good candidate for this graduate program. And if you're not sure about that, that's something we can work with and we can talk to them about and we can talk to your mentors about. For the graduate degree award, your academic background is more important than it might be for some of the other types of awards. As you may have heard me say, there's no minimum grade point average for Fulbright. Your academic achievement needs to be as good as it needs to be to do what you want to do. So in this case, what you want to do is get into a very good graduate program. So therefore, your transcripts and your academic background should be of sufficient quality to allow you to do that. They do not necessarily compare master's students against PhD students against bachelor students, right? They adjust that. Don't think you're at a disadvantage just because you're younger. They're going to meet you where you are in your journey. And they are instructed to compare applicants to their peers, right? So the national screening committees are going to read bachelor's level students against bachelor's level students. Even if your country does not have a minimum language requirement, also keep in mind that foreign language proficiency is commensurate with the needs of the project. So if you are doing a project in a foreign country that would require you to be proficient in that language, let's say you're doing anthropological work or sociological work where you're out in communities and rural areas, speaking with people, doing interviews, having to collaborate with people outside of urban areas or outside of the university, then even though language isn't required, you need it because that's part of feasibility. In some countries that where English is not widely spoken, they're going to either recommend or require foreign language proficiency just for your day-to-day functioning. All of Latin America, for instance, recommends intermediate Spanish, regardless of what else you might need for the project, just to get through day-to-day life. And again, not all places do that. Finland, for instance, is not going to expect you to speak Finnish because that language is impossible. Conversational ability is a big plus, even if it isn't required. So even if they don't require the foreign language, the fact that you've studied it before, you have some proficiency or have made the effort to do that is a draw for them. It shows real seriousness of purpose. And the way that we assess this is with a foreign language evaluation, where it's very simple. You will set up a time to meet with a foreign language instructor here at ASU, and they will evaluate your proficiency and then upload that to your application. So very easy to do. You'll hear us mention community engagement a lot. It's a huge part of Fulbright. And it's up to you to determine what that looks like in your particular case. It is essential to the Fulbright experience. It's what most people remember. It's what most people draw from this experience is that engagement with the host community. So they will look at your extracurricular activities as and evidence of social consciousness, meaning do you engage in volunteer activities? Do you occupy leadership roles within your community? And how do you spend your spare time? Do you engage in sports, arts, literature, um, conservation? What else is out there that can bring you closer to the people that you're going to live and work with? There are several places in the application where this is presented. And it's something that we actually highlight when we write your evaluation, that you have a lot of potential for this. I mentioned before, experience with the host country can or cannot be an issue. This is oddly enough, one of the most frequently asked questions I get. Applicants will ask, well, I've been to this country before, does that hurt me? And the answer is probably not. I don't know if this is on a Reddit thread or Grad Cafe out there or something, but that is overblown. All things being equal, the national readers would prefer to select somebody who's never traveled before. But in real life, all things are never equal. I think applicants who do have previous foreign travel experience, especially in the target country, tend to write stronger applications because they already have a better understanding of the culture. They have a better understanding of the day-to-day interactions that happen there, or whatever else, language capability. So I think it's very difficult to write a super strong application if you've never experienced anything with this country before. And conversely, you can do perfectly well. In fact, they would prefer that you not have it. They want to be a big part of your life. They want to be a life-changing experience, to be an eye-opening experience. But again, it's a push and pull. The only time previous experience with the country comes into play is if you literally just lived there as a citizen, right? Not necessarily as a citizen, but as you took mail there, you had a job, you were going to school, whatever. They don't consider that if you're in the military or your folks are in the military or anything like that. They wouldn't even consider a year-long study abroad to be substantial enough. But occasionally we have applicants who have spent substantial time in the country before. Most countries will also not permit you to apply if you are presently residing in that country. So you can't be in the country when you're applying to Fulbright. I mentioned geographic diversity. If you look at a map of the concentration of higher education institutions in this country, you'll see that they're very tightly clustered up and down the eastern seaboard. The space between little dots on the map is much wider out here in the American West and Southwest in particular. So good news for us, ASU counts as institutional diversity and geographic diversity coming from Arizona. But again, all the other kind of expected categories of diversity, field of study even, academic background. So you want to be sure that's known in your application, that, whatever we imagine to be the typical candidate would be, that you in some way are different than that. So the statement of grant purpose is the keystone of the application. I imagine that all readers start with this, and if I was on the Fulbright committee, I would skip all the other stuff and just go right to the proposal, because if you don't like the proposal, there's no point in reading the rest of the application. So I don't know if that's how other people actually read these applications, but I think it's a good thought exercise. So how can I grab them from the first paragraph? How can I keep them reading? How do I get them to stay with my application and all the way through? So this 2-page essay will basically outline the who, what, when, where, and why of your Fulbright year as you see it. It should also indicate what your ideas for community engagement are. It should express what your career objectives are and how this project, what you're proposing to do, this study that you're proposing to do, how it actually supports that. And more importantly, your reader should care. It's not sufficient that this is important to you. It has to be important to society. So the fact that you get a degree in flood control management should matter, right? And you have to make that matter. What draws you to this specific program, and which way does it stand out from others like it? Who are the notable faculty? What does this curriculum require? What courses will you take? And what will this year look like? And what's in the timeline? And most programs are going to require some element of research. And in my observations of of the national committees, every year I get to sit in on a reading committee and watch them deliberate and just sort of be a fly on the wall. And what I have noticed is that many of the selectors are very interested in seeing what your proposed research is. Even if it's not a huge part of your academic program, they want to know what your research project is. So that's very important to articulate. It should also be made clear in this application how you're qualified to execute the project. So that could be your previous study, previous professional experience, research, anything like that. It should be clear how this project is going to contribute to the Fulbright mission. What's notable about this university, location-wise, given your career goals, ideas for community engagement, and how we'll be able to do, what will we be able to do at the completion of this year? And that's one way I think about what will we be able to do at the end of this year that you weren't able to do before, and then what happens next. Now, if it seems like that's a lot to do in 2 pages, it's because it is. And that's why we are here, because there's a lot to be done in those 2 pages. One of the things that we'll share with you in our follow-up, and this is also in the onset Canvas, is a matrix or a spreadsheet that you can actually use to track and research your different graduate options. And so this was actually developed by one of our previous Fulbright winners, Julia Jackman, and she very gladly shared it with us. So, later applicants could use this to collect their data. So again, we'll share this in our follow-up email with you. So things to be thinking about, what are the criteria that we use or the strategies that we use to identify what promising graduate programs are? One of them, of course, is location. Why does it matter that it's here? For some candidates, it may not matter, right? There's generally 2 different types of candidates: those that identify a country and then figure out what graduate program within that country, or those that say, I am going to this university because that is where Dr. So-and-so is, because they are the world's leading expert in whatever. And for all I care, the university could be on Mars. I don't care. And so both are fine. Eventually, you'll have to explain why the location matters, but it should be notable. What's different about the way this is studied at this geographic location? Who are the faculty members that you're going to work with? What's the overall reputation of this university? Is it ranked in any kind of way? Is it considered to be one of the best in this particular field of study? Do I meet the admissions or exceed the admissions requirement? And what's actually involved in the curriculum? Do I want to take these classes? Am I qualified to take these classes? And then thinking too, beyond just the coursework, are there research labs? Are there repositories or libraries or archives or study centers, centers of excellence, speaking engagements, all these other parts of the university that make the experience valuable? Maybe there's other things at this university that draw you there just besides the degree. And then opportunities for community engagement. And many of our applicants will do the research to find student organizations or clubs that they're able to engage with. Many of the UK universities, for instance, have whole pages, just like we do, devoted to student clubs. And we would want to find a way for you to continue doing the things you're interested in while also learning new things from your host. So I included a couple of examples, and these are really just from the abstract to give you some sense of scope. So the first one, and this is actually from Julia's application, the one that created the matrix. And so she did a Master of Science degree in Global Health at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. So as she proposes here, the first year, this is a multi-year project. The first year of coursework focuses on global health inequalities and research methodology. The second year of the master's program incorporates a thesis project, which will be an extension of the research I will complete during my Fulbright year. My research will be supervised by Professor, I'm not going to pronounce Norwegian names, the leader of the Center for Global Health Inequalities Research. At Chain, I will continue my ongoing independent research on barriers to refugee access to higher education. So we've got a really nice tight focus. We have a good justification because we've identified a single faculty member that she's going to work with. I will expand this project to investigate education as a social determinant of health within refugee populations, specifically those resettled in Norway. So again, making a case for this specific location. During my Fulbright year, I'll investigate A, refugee access to higher education in Norway, B, health outcomes for resettled refugee populations, and C, interventions for eliminating barriers to refugee access and education. So a very clear research pathway, very clear justification for why she's chosen this program, and identified an individual faculty member to work with. So good example, she did win. Here's another one. This is an open study research proposal to do a master's degree in peace studies in Serbia. So I will use my grant to fund a 1-year regional master's degree in peace studies. The program is taught in English by the Faculty of Political Science at the University of Belgrade. I'm currently studying history and writing a thesis on the former Yugoslavia that falls under the category of peace studies. The purpose of my research to expand the shockingly minimal literature on memory, space, and place in the Balkans and Serbia specifically. After the program, I intend to pursue a PhD in Eastern European history with an emphasis in memory and oral history to add to scholarly efforts to conflict resolution. So we've identified qualifications, we've identified the need or the gap to be filled by this study, and we've connected it to longer term academic and professional plans. And we've made it matter for somebody besides us, right? I don't think we can ever have too many people that specialize in conflict study or conflict resolution study, right? So that applicant also received the award. And then finally, I have to offer an apology. I put this one last because we were going to have a guest today, Claire Aggie, who was the ASU student who actually won this award. She was going to join us today, but she's traveling in Asia and had some interference and some big mix-ups with time zones and things like that. So she apologizes. She let me know just before I hopped on that she wasn't able to join us. But here's what she did. She actually just wrapped this up. So she pursued a Master of Science in Supply Management at LUT University with an emphasis on sustainable development, green logistics, and business ethics. This study grant will allow me to pursue my career goals of developing sustainable supply chain strategies for global food distribution, creating partnerships between private sector corporations and international humanitarian organizations, and someday performing a leading role with a large nonprofit centered around zero hunger future. So it's not just broad supply chain management, right? She is zeroed in on this award and this graduate degree because it specifically focuses on sustainable supply chain management. This is what her professional interest is in. So that's making a good case for this program. So with the Fulbright, I hope to shape the future of supply chain food sustainability policies in international planning, distribution, purchasing, and procurement to promote the goal of zero hunger. So again, this is an objective of public significance. This is something that matters to everyone and would make the world a better place because we waste a lot of food along the supply chain. So that's actually where she went. She was able to work with a lot of people from a wide range of countries that were also in this program. And many people are surprised to find that the people by your side in these programs aren't just from the host country. And so this is part of the larger European consortia of higher education institutions. That's Claire in the pinkish jacket all the way on the right. And here she is presenting at Fulbright conference. So a big part of the Fulbright experience is that you are within the larger Fulbright cohort. So there's a large group of Fulbrighters already in country, and the embassies will also often have programming for you to participate. There is her entire Fulbright cohort in Finland. Claire is right in the middle, next to the guy in the awesome red sweater. And many of the Fulbright commissions will organize group activities and outings. And so obviously Finland is cold. And so an Arizona student got to experience what life is like in a much different environment. On the right, she is actually above the Arctic Circle there, took a picture. And on the left, she is on her way to an initiation ritual that students at LUT engage in, where your thesis mentors actually take you out into the lake and you go swimming. Yes, it's cold. They call it a baptism. So yeah, there's a lot of things that go into community engagement besides just going to classes and things like that. I never get any pictures of anyone just sitting in class, right? So in terms of resources, our website is where you will make your appointments, of course. If you go to our events tab there, you'll also find a link to our YouTube page, which lists various pre-recorded sessions. This one will be housed there, of course. If you go to fulbright.asu.edu, most of the FAQs are there, some getting started videos, as well as details on the application timeline. So if you get confused about what dates are important, and then you will spend a lot of time on the US student site as well, where you'll research awards, you'll research individual countries and programs, find data about different awards, because it is important to know the relative competitiveness of different countries. So if you haven't already, you should schedule an intake meeting. So these are 30-minute meetings. They're group-based. Each one has 4 virtual seats in it. They're done via Zoom. And you'll pick one of 3 types of appointments, either the research and arts, graduate degree, which is what we're talking about now, or ETA. And we will get you started, find out what your questions are, figure out what the relevant countries are on the table, and just basically get your baseline understanding. And we'll get you off and running from there. So let me pause there to see what kinds of questions you may have for myself, Dr. Stoff, or just in general. Yeah, Laura, go ahead.
Hi, thank you for sharing all that great information. I'm curious, besides like that sheet that you showed, do you have any strategies for narrowing down countries and programs for graduate degrees, like besides just searching for interest? Because I'm looking at like the Fulbright page and I'm like, wow, there's a lot of different things.
Yeah. Dr. Stoff, how do you help students get started on this process?
Usually I tell students to first reach out to their current faculty with whom they're taking classes on issues that are related to their future studies that they think will be the focus of their graduate study, and ask them if they're aware of specific programs in other countries that are particularly well known for their expertise, the offerings that they have in that particular field. Most of the time when you're looking for graduate programs, you want to find the place where there are the scholars, the resources, the interests that align best with what you're trying to achieve, and that it's a leading place in that area. So again, as Dr. Mock said, you're going to have to make the argument that you need to go to this program rather than to stay in the US and go to any one of a number of very great programs that we have here in our own country. Why would Fulbright pay for you to go abroad if you can get the same kind of experience and education here in the US? So a really good place to start is with your current faculty. And then I also tell students to think about, again, place. So is your project or is your study something that does require you to be interacting with people in a particular community? Then obviously that's going to narrow things down a lot, right? So if you're, again, doing an ethnography on, people in a certain place, then you're going to want to be in that place, right? If it's not necessarily connected to a place, then you're going to want to look for the programs that are the leading programs. So I'll give you a really good example. We just had a student who was selected for a program in Norway on prison. They have a very unique approach to incarceration where they do electronic monitoring for lots of individuals who have been convicted of crimes rather than institutionalizing them. He had been studying this through our own Inside Out program here at ASU. And wanted to find a place where they were uniquely suited for him to study things in a new way, in a leading place. So it didn't necessarily have to be Norway. That wasn't connected to the place, but it did have to be a place where they did this. So it happened to be Norway, right? On the other hand, right, if we have a student who is going to do research with in Moldova, she particularly needed to be in the place where she could access Moldovans and talk with them, then that's going to be the guiding principle behind your selection.
Great,
Tad?
thank you for answering that.
Yeah, and I'll add a couple things to that. And one of the pages we have in our Canvas resources actually provides a lot of this context as well. If you're currently working on things, look in your bibliographies, look in your works cited, where are people doing research on this? Are a lot of people outside the US working on this? If so, where are they? Does everyone seem to be quoting or citing from a certain study or source? Are there places where they can do the research that we can't do here? We had a student go to Switzerland, for instance, several years ago because she actually, she now has a PhD in neuroscience, but she was really interested in psilocybin mushrooms, which, because they're illegal in the United States, can't be used for research purposes. So she wanted to go to someplace where it was legal to do that research. So looking at what you're already reading and studying, and that might lead a trail of breadcrumbs. And then the other resource that I share with students is the list of institutional partnerships that we have at ASU. We are a very collaborative university, and we have partnerships all over the world with other universities. And that's as good a starting point as any to say, we are a strong program, a strong partner with Queen's University in Australia, right? And then start looking at programs that way. So a lot of different options, but I would certainly emphasize that one of the best starting points is talking to your own faculty.
Great, thank you.
I would also add to not be afraid to send cold emails to faculty and researchers at other institutions. I know that seems daunting and scary often to students, like, oh, I can't write to this person. They're like, the leading expert in this. They'll never talk to me. Most of the time that's not true. And researchers and professors at other universities are often very happy to speak with students who when you write to them and say, like, I've read your work and I'm very interested in pursuing further study of this, and I'd love to be able to work with you. Professors like it when you pump up their ego a little bit. And so that's another avenue that if you at first find dead ends with current faculty here at ASU, or and as Dr. Mock said, if you're just perusing bibliographies and looking at footnotes, but you don't have any way to connect with those people otherwise, really don't be afraid to reach out to them.
Absolutely. Great. Other questions? Yeah, oddly enough, simply Googling, right? But it takes some research strategy. The narrower your search term, the more concrete your search terms. And so if you just search for history, master's programs, Europe, you're going to get way too many hits. Whereas opposed if you're studying Balkan history, master's programs, and just kind of general exploratory research to kind of identify. I worked with a candidate several years ago who was really interested in homelessness policy, and that's where all of her service activities were. That's where she focused her research. She was like a pub pol student, and she said, "I want to apply for Fulbright. I think I want to do a grad degree." I'm like, "That's great. Where do you want to go?" She's like, "I have no idea." I'm like, "Well, can we narrow it down?" She's like, "I'm pretty sure Europe." I'm like, "Okay, go away and do some research, and you'd come back and tell me where the best place in Europe would be to go to study homelessness policy." And she came back a week later and said, "Finland. They have a housing first policy. They do everything right. They have the lowest rate, blah, blah, blah." And she had found all these great reasons to go to Finland. And then once she got there, she drilled down to, okay, where are the great programs within Finland? Because she wanted to be there to see it firsthand, to talk to people, to be able to access, these resources. No previous, much like Claire, no previous experience with or interest in Finland, but it turned out to be the best place for that work. So, cool. Other questions? And let me just emphasize something that Dr. Stoff said. Once again, you are going to want to get your faculty on board for this, and I would probably pose a meeting here in the spring to let them know that this is something you're considering, that you'd like to do, because not only are they going to be writing wonderful letters of recommendation for you for this application, but they can be an important resource. Dr. Stoff and I have both our own academic areas, and the chances that it's your academic area is very low. And so it's important that you get some input from somebody in your field as to what to propose, how to talk about this, and what's needed to be done in this field of study. So.
And we can also help you identify folks at ASU if you don't have sufficient numbers of faculty members that are in your area. That's the wonderful thing about being at a giant institution like ASU, is chances are there is probably an expert in that somewhere among the 5,000 plus faculty members that are associated with the university.
Absolutely. Experts.asu.edu. So. Well, wonderful. Well, if there aren't any further questions, we will release you back into the wild. We will be continuing the Fulbright Fridays series the next 3 weeks. Our next session will be actually talking about how to cultivate strong letters of recommendation. So strategies for doing that, what's expected of recommendations for Fulbright, how to be a good partner with your faculty. And then the final 2 weeks will be a two-parter that'll be focused specifically on how to conceive and begin to execute an actual research project. So if you decide that I don't know if I want to do a graduate degree, but I would really like to explore the option of doing my own independent research project, then that would be a great session for you to attend as well. And if you're not able to, again, we will record these and have them archived. So thank you, Kai. Thank you, Dr. Stoff. I greatly appreciate it. And you all have a wonderful weekend. Thanks for making the time.